handprint. Andy Weidl putting his handprints on this team very clearly in their first full offseason running the show. You looked at their free agency, got off to a little bit of a start that I was like, man, I'll be honest, I was disappointed immediately when the tampering period started because like 15, 20 minutes in, Cam Sutton has an agreement with the Detroit Lions. And that was somebody to me, like I assumed was going to be back. I'm not going to say who the player was, but literally a player, a current Pittsburgh Steeler told me that Cam is going to be back. Now, I talked about this on the show. Maybe it was just him being hopeful by saying that because clearly it wasn't something like there was an agreement. Good for Cam. He got a nice payday there, much more than what his career earnings have been so far in his 6 years in Pittsburgh. So great for him. I hope he succeeds over there. He's a versatile chess piece. I think they're going to love him in Detroit. Now, how do the Steelers combat that? 32-year-old Patrick Peterson. What a name to bring in, first and foremost, before we talk about the productivity still at a high level. But Patrick Peterson, I mean, think about that. The accolades that this guy has. Everybody knows who Patrick. If you are our age, Patrick Peterson was like the guy at LSU and then came into the league, obviously burst on the scene with Arizona, just Pro Bowl after Pro Bowl, all pro after all pro. Played last year in Minnesota, although it sounds like he talked about it, almost came to Pittsburgh last offseason. This offseason, they make it happen. Scheme versatility, still producing at a high level, 5 picks last year for Minnesota. On a short-term deal, despite his age, I'm completely cool with it. He could fall off a cliff at any moment, given his age, but at the same time, keeps himself in really good shape. Totally cool with that being the replacement on the outside. Now, as free agency went on, I think this is where I got more excited. You see the way that they started to rebuild in the trenches. Now, Larry Ogunjobi coming back, I think that was big. We didn't really expect that one to happen, but he did get a nice payday. And maybe a little bit more than I would have liked, considering, the foot injury that hampered him last year wasn't as productive as you would have liked to have seen. I thought last year was a prove-it year. And Damontae Kazee coming back, which I think was a necessity given we lost Cam Sutton, because it gives you another chess piece in that defensive backfield. At least you have that guy you can move around. And then outside guys that were brought in. Herbig, I really like, even if he's not going to be a starter, that swing guard can play both spots, can play center too, like in a pinch if he had to. Just a massive dude, a mauler in the run game. I think obviously the Weidl ties, this is like starting to build an identity. And then this kind of sets up the next move. Isaac Seumalo, not on my radar whatsoever for the team, especially after you already added a guard. I was like, okay, Herbig's probably taking Dotson's spot. No, Zach. Wait another day. Isaac Seumalo coming over from the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles on a 3-year, $24 million deal. I love this. I think this is their best signing. I think that this is a road grader type. He's also very good in the pass blocking game. You want to talk about building an identity in the trenches. This is why I said like Andy Weidl is really putting his stamp on this team, because this is what he did in Philly. We're rebuilding the trenches. We're getting back to the run game in Pittsburgh. I don't think anybody's probably happier about the way free agency has gone than Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren.
Yeah, honestly. I think that the 2 offensive line signings were great. Herbig, I thought was good, and it was, like you said, it was a depth piece for sure, and possibly maybe he gets a start. Maybe he starts over Dotson, but the Seumalo, is that how you pronounce it? Seumalo. The Seumalo signing, I mean, that is somebody that has championship caliber experience and is really good at his position and immediately improves your offensive line at the left guard position, assuming that's where he starts.
He started 3 years at left guard before he played right guard last year. So
yeah, I don't want to just Dotson, you're out, but it's just kind of how it is. But I think that immediately proves what was the most important part outside of, obviously they haven't signed a tackle. You still want them to improve at one of those guys, but at least the offensive line as a whole, you're immediately improving what was the most important part to improve in the offense this offseason. And I think they hit a home run with those two. I think that that's something that is going to go a long way into next season, because outside of offensive line, you look at the positions, we talked about how they could add another receiver, but outside of that, like tight end, running back, quarterback, they're covered at every other offensive position except for some of those offensive linemen. And so now they're not only getting a more productive starter, but they're also ensuring some more depth on the offensive line, which is great. And then I'll just go in reverse of the way you talked about him. Larry Ogunjobi, he's one that I thought could come back. Didn't know that he'd actually come back because he might get paid somewhere else. And I think you tweeted about it. The one guy that we thought was going to be back, and Cam Sutton, is gone, and the guy that we thought we weren't going to have back, Larry Ogunjobi, he's back. Which, I mean, I think it's good. Did he deserve all the money in the contract? Maybe not, but I'm not going to argue about that. I think the
Steelers were backed into a corner because of the need.
Well, that's the thing. I think that you look at defensive line, you look at how empty it is depth-wise for the Steelers and how much you kind of need to have guys in that room to stick around. I think that you needed that productivity back. And I think that Larry Ogunjobi, despite being someone that you might have overpaid a little bit, if you wanted to keep him, you might have had to do that just to keep him in Pittsburgh. You don't know what offers he had somewhere else. So I think that's a good signing, though. I think it ensures at least one spot on the defensive line for a couple of years. And then the Patrick Peterson signing, that's just a fun signing to me. He might be bad. I don't expect him to be bad, but he could turn out to be bad. But I think for the contract he's on and the years and the money, it's fine. They could get out of it after 1 year. And I still anticipate him to be a productive corner for the Steelers. After losing Cam Sutton, that was a low blow, but what a signing by the Steelers just for name recognition to really make Steeler fans forget all about losing Cam Sutton and immediately, we have Patrick Peterson. And I saw some people being like, this would have been cool 6 years ago. I'm like, no, I still think he's a productive corner. I mean, you look at what he did in Minnesota being at his age, there wasn't really much of a drop off from previous years. Obviously, he might not have some of the versatility that he used to, but that's going to happen when you're in your 30s as a corner. But I think it's a really good signing for the Steelers. It helps that cornerback room, but I still think they're going to have to improve on it still. And I don't think, and we're probably going to talk about the draft a little bit. I'll just give a little tidbit now. I don't think that this means cornerback can't be the pick at 17. I think there's still, if I'm still betting on it, corner is still my pick at 17 for what I think the Steelers are going to take.
Okay. Yeah, and we didn't talk about the two linebackers yet because I was saving that to be its own thing because they just completely reshaped the linebacker room. We knew Devin Bush was going to be gone. We had talked about Myles Jack just because, from what he was set to make, it really didn't make sense, but also similarly to the Larry Ogunjobi situation where they kind of backed into a corner where they needed to have Myles Jack back. They felt no. they cut him. They released Myles Jack. They saved that $8 million. Honestly, what surprised me the most out of this reshuffling was Robert Spillane not being back, him signing with the Raiders. I thought that was as close to a guarantee, right there with Cam Sutton, maybe even more than Cam Sutton, honestly. So with Spillane being gone, Cole Holcomb comes in as well as Elandon Roberts. I would say I don't think that they're totally similar. I think their strengths are both coming downhill. I think they're both better in the run game than the pass game. I think Holcomb offers something in pass coverage. I don't think Roberts offers you anything in pass coverage. Neither one of them are going to carry a tight end up the seam or anything like that. Or when you get into that third level of the defense, you don't want them covering anybody. But Holcomb can hold his own in some drop sets and stuff like that. I think Holcomb is really the guy that they're hoping is something that they can continue to build upon, turns 27 before the season starts. I think they view him as a potential key piece of the defense, not just this year, but going forward. I think that's why he gets a 3-year deal. Robert's here on a 2-year deal. That 2 years seems to be the sweet spot for a lot of people in free agency now. But Holcomb, I mean, if Holcomb was hitting free agency after he had a foot injury last year after 7 games, I think, something like that. If he hit free agency after 2021, he would have cashed out. He was unbelievable in 2021 in everything. He was getting picks. He was forcing fumbles. He had 100 and call me crazy. I don't know if you're looking at the number right now. I want to see he had 140 or something combined tackles.
142.
Yeah, so close. Something stupid. He's all over the field. I think that player is still in there. I think the injury last year is obviously, why he wasn't able to continue to build upon that. But they're obviously banking on the health here. past this physical. They give him 3 years, which I think is a nice, testament to where they feel like he is health wise. So I'm excited. I'm excited about both these guys. I think they're both going to be able to contribute, but really like the Holcomb one is the one that has me juiced up. And it's not just because he has a mullet.
Oh yeah. You were pretty worried that he cut it in his,
that
his
picture, I
signing
couldn't
picture.
tell at first. Yeah.
Yeah. You saw the little flare out the side. No, it took the Steelers no time to completely revamp. And then I saw, I don't even know who it was. Alan Saunders maybe tweeted the Mark Robinson sitting in the Steelers locker room, and it's just a Will Smith in the Fresh Prince house at the end of the series.
He's by himself for a few
He's
minutes.
Just by himself. Yeah, that is pretty crazy. I mean, we kind of expected it, just not the Robert Spillane part. That one to me was the surprising part. He, to me, to relate it to another sport, was kind of like I thought he'd be like the Chad Weidl of the Penguins with the Steelers. Like always just kind of around. He's not necessarily the starter at the position, but he does okay when he's in there. I mean, according to somebody, he's the best linebacker on the Steelers. But
a star.
That one was the surprising part to me. Now, the two guys they brought in, Elandon Roberts and Cole Holcomb, I like those guys. I think what you can get with those guys is something you didn't really get from the Steelers linebackers, at least in like the past couple of years, in just reliability at what they can do. Even though they're not complete, like, okay, so like Roberts isn't necessarily the best in pass coverage, but he is a sure tackler and good coming downhill and good against the run. I don't really feel worried about him against the run, even though some of the linebackers for the Steelers in recent years, even though that was their specialty, or if they were good against the run, they still were pretty bad against it. I feel like that is, and maybe that's just because it's new energy, new blood. I just feel like there's some more reliability at the two guys they brought in. Now, Cole Holcomb, I think that, like you said, there's a player in there that could be that 2021 linebacker. And if that's the case, I think the Steelers got a gem of a signing. And that's a linebacker that we've kind of been hoping for. Now, I still think that they're probably going to add another one, because outside of those two and Mark Robinson, I mean, they have Tay Crowder and Chappelle Russell. So I think that there's still some room to add at the linebacker position.
Similarly, I would say similarly to how you said about corner. I don't think it takes linebacker off their draft.
Oh yeah.